Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer. And today we're going to be talking about the connecting the dots between the gut, the liver, and the thyroid. Interesting, right? I'm really delighted to have Jenn Malecha here. She is going to share her story on how all of this connected. So I can't wait to hear it. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you so much for having me here, Jane. It's so great to connect with you in this space right now to support other people.
I know. Well, this is what it's about, right? I know you're the same way that I am. We just want to help other people and help them figure out why they aren't getting answers to some of their health problems. So I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about you so they know your background. So Jenn Malecha supports busy, health-minded professionals in taking back control of their health by giving them access to the right lab tests and resources so they can find the missing pieces of their health puzzle. Actually fix what is wrong and get back to feeling like themselves again. Using over a decade of personal training experience, training in functional diagnostic nutrition and transformational coaching, she creates personalized health building programs for clients that are realistic, sustainable for long lasting results, and that empowers the clients to be the boss of their own health. If you're ready to look at the big picture of your health and not just one disconnected piece at a time, lots of us have done that, to embrace healthy as a way of being and stop settling for anything less than you deserve when it comes to your health and happiness, then Jenn is exactly who you've been looking for. Jenn, welcome. That sounds like, I know some people will be like, oh yes, this is what I need. So we all came to this space, right? Because we had our own health journey, puzzle pieces not locking together, not able to figure stuff out either for ourselves or someone we love. What's your background?
Well, I'm the same. And what's interesting is as you were reading my bio, I was like, oh, I need to update that because it's been longer than over a decade. It's been like 20 years at this point in time. And I would say that I'm somebody that's always been kind of like fascinated with the concept of health and fitness. Like even back when I was a little girl, we grew a garden and I would get up in the morning time when I was like 5 years old. My dad would get up and go running at 4 a.m. and I would like ride my bike next to him and be outside playing until the sun went down. So I've always been this kind of like, active, kind of like health food minded person. And, as the definitions of eating healthy has evolved, like I've evolved as well too. And all of that kind of inspired me to get a career in that space. So I studied kinesiology in college, the emphasis of fitness, nutrition, and health. And that's really where like not only did I enter into this world of health from a career perspective, but that's also when I started having my own health issues.
Hmm.
Developed like severe allergies that would blow up into ear infections that would take me out for days. I was actually diagnosed with skin cancer in my 20s without any reason as to like why necessarily. Like there was no family health history of anything related to skin cancer, and I wasn't like a chronic sunbather. I mean, I was in San Diego and it is sunny here, but I was going to class every day.
Hmm.
And so that is really what kind of triggered the light bulb to go on for me to start exploring other spaces as what we now call like the functional health or medicine space or holistic health space, and looking for some of those missing pieces of my own health puzzle, essentially. And this actually was the entry point to kind of our topic today, because in that process of looking for answers, some of the things that I found about my body is that I had a very congested liver and I had a messy digestive system. My intestinal tract was full of parasites and bacteria and yeast overgrowth, and I had these hormone imbalances, which created this perfect storm to cultivate cancer essentially in my body. So I'm really happy to say and share that here I am over 15 years from that point and no reoccurrence of cancer. Like, I was able to take all that information, change my lifestyle, improve things, and went along in my happy way. All was good. And then in 2016, we discovered that we had toxic mold in our home. And I had actually been experiencing a decline in my health for about 2 years leading up to that. And again, I found myself in this place of like struggling to find the answers to what was going on. I mean, I was having really severe breast tenderness. Like my breast would get so inflamed that you could feel heat coming off of them through 2 layers of clothing, like through a sports bra and like a top. Basically, I went to every quote unquote conventional, like Western medicine women's health specialist in the area, and nobody could explain to me or give any reason as to why this was happening. Yet they wanted to, put me on hormone replacement therapy and all this stuff. I'm like, why would I do that if I don't know what's actually going on, right?
Yeah.
So come to find out, we discovered the mold. It was like divine intervention. I just one day happened to open up the closet in the guest room and see all this black mold on the ceiling. And that was when it all dropped in. And I was like, oh, this is what's been going on. And from that space, like, then realized that my thyroid was a mess. I was dealing with some estrogen dominant stuff. My liver was a mess again. My gut was a wreck because of all of that. And again, embarked on this journey to recover my health. And here I am about to turn 40 next month. And I feel better as I approach 40 and beyond than I've ever felt in my entire life before. So
Amazing story. Wow. Ha- I mean, it, to have cancer, skin cancer, and then, come back from that and then have a second thing. I mean, life presents us with challenges, right? And so I believe to help us learn and grow. So you had this second challenge. How how was it different from the first challenge in that, like, how did you approach it differently, but still come to a solution?
yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that life is always going to happen to us, right? Like, I just want to hang on to what you kind of just said there, is that no matter how quote unquote healthy we think that we're living or the things that we're doing, like we can't predict something like toxic mold in our home, right? Water damage necessarily, or prevent those things, or traffic, like the stress that comes from that.
Hmm.
So, luckily, because I had already made a lot of changes in my lifestyle, like I had a pretty good solid foundation of what I was doing in terms of the way that I was eating, like sleeping really well, taking supplements that were supporting my body, had already gone through a process of eliminating toxins, doing meditation, that type of stuff. But the way that it was different, Jane, was that it actually presented this opportunity, or like made me more aware that my body needed more from me. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes people get in this space of like, but I'm already doing so much. Why do I have to do more? And I get it. Like that was hard for me at first too. And then I'm like, but how do we turn that around and see that as a gift? Like that we get to do more for our body. And this is where, like, I'm as I work with busy health minded professionals, the reason that I work with those types of people is that's because the type of person that I am. So I can relate to that, busy type of lifestyle where your career is a priority. We tend to have like, tend to deprioritize ourselves. And, I kept thinking I was doing self-care and making myself a priority. And what this really showed me is that I actually, like, my body needed more from me.
Hmm.
I want to give people like a practical, tactical example of this, is that, fitness has always been a big part of who I am, like my identity. It's something that I love, going to the gym, lifting heavy. I used to participate in fitness shows and competitions and whatnot. And so when I found this mold and realized I had, not only was my thyroid a mess, but I actually was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And so I adapted my diet. I went towards an autoimmune paleo diet to help. I was like on a mission to reverse my Hashimoto's naturally as quickly as possible. So I really like reined things in, diet, sleep again, like was just really good about getting quality sleep, swapped up some of my supplements, amplified what I was doing to detox my body. But I kept my exercise routine the same. I was still going to the gym and Olympic lifting and running multiple times a week and like doing this more intense workout, right? And hanging on to that because it was part of this, like, it's who I am, it's my identity, the structure, it's the routine. And what I was making marginal progress. And then I realized in order to make bigger leaps and bounds in my health, I needed to let go of that intense exercise and give my body actually what it needed. So I committed to 30 days of just walking and yoga, because when our body's in a depleted state, when it has this just these imbalances and this dysfunction going on, exercise, is normally good. It breaks down bone and tissue, and like we rebuild and we get stronger. But when we don't have the available resources to do that because our body is in this needs deep healing, we're just kind of breaking it down even more. And so that was like an example of just me realizing I had to do more for my body. I had to give it more of what it needed in order to feel like my best self,
Hmm.
right?
I can even hear in your voice that you were coming from it like from a really loving way, not like, oh, I got to do more. It was like, it needs more. It needs more care and attention. And that's a totally different feeling than what else have I got to do, you know? And I'm sure that helped in your healing too, coming at it from that feeling of loving and caring. Like I always think about like caring for a small child or a pet that needs attention, that kind of level of caring. So it sounds like that's what worked for you. So, how did you know that you said your gut was a mess, your liver was a mess, the thyroid was a mess? How did you know that these were a mess?
So in the work that I do, I love to run functional lab testing, and using saliva, urine, stool, hair samples. And so some of these tests revealed some insights about these things specifically. So doing something like a Dutch test that does look at hormones, but it also gives us insight into estrogen and liver metabolism. Doing a stool sample test to see parasites, yeast overgrowth, inflammation that's going on in the digestive system. So having some of that information can be really helpful, right? And I also want to just say to people that one of the things that I've been taught by my mentor, Reed Davis, who I think you've had here on the podcast,
Mhm.
is that what's important when we're running lab tests is that we always want to correlate it back to the person, essentially. So if somebody feels great, but their lab test, maybe don't look so great, like a lab test is only a snapshot in time, and we want to correlate it back to the person and maybe not chase things like if somebody's feeling great. And alternatively, if somebody's feeling poor and the lab test doesn't really share anything, which I think is a lot of people have this experience in the Western medicine. They're going to the doctor and like getting blood tests done and being told everything looks fine, but they don't feel that way, right? So when we encounter that, we want to like, we need to take in that information and go, okay, like that's not, that lab test didn't show me what I needed, but there's something else for me, basically, is really important. I think I just want to say that about
Mm.
the approach to testing here. So the testing provided some of that information, but also, even if I didn't have the testing, there is like the symptoms that I was experiencing, things like cystic acne, for example. So when we have something like acne happening, that can be because of hormones being off. And I did have like mold, mimics estrogen in the body. So I had elevated estrogen levels.
Mm.
Also, the skin can be an expression of the liver, like or like detox, like your body's trying to get something out, right? So it's a good correlating sign to go, okay, the body's trying to express something out. It's trying to detox something. So there's something that is going on. Feelings like being bloated, that lets us know that the digestive system is not happy. And I think that we've just been conditioned to think like, because something like that is common, that it's just normal, and it's really not. Struggling to lose weight, like over the course of, as I mentioned before we found the mold, my health had been declining leading up to that point. And some of the symptoms that I was experiencing are some of the ones I just described, but also I'd slowly put on 15 pounds that no matter what I did, I couldn't get it off. No matter how much I like manage my diet or my exercise, feeling tired, right? Sluggish. So that can relate to like thyroid. That's very common with the thyroid stuff as well too. And also one thing that was really interesting is my dentist pointed out that I was grinding my teeth. He's like, are
Yeah.
you stressed? And I was like, I don't really feel like I'm stressed. Well, what's very interesting is that the technical term for teeth grinding is bruxism, and bruxism can strongly correlate when you've got parasites, bacteria, and yeast overgrowth.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that.
So,
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like the tests are beautiful, but if you think about humanity's been around for so long and tests haven't been around for a long time. And, like I think about traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, like they had other tools, right, to help diagnose. And so it's interesting, some of those other things that can help with, like you said, just kind of pointing people in the right direction, especially, I mean, where I live is really hard to get testing done. I did find a function, I live in Newfoundland and off the east coast of Canada, and there was not a functional, I don't think even now there's a functional medicine practitioner here. And so I worked online with someone in Ottawa, and I could get some tests done, but not all tests done, through the mail kind of thing. So it can be challenging for people, and the expense of it as well can be prohibitive for some people. So it's good to know there's other things available as well, without having to run a battery of tests. So we're talking today about the connection between the liver and the gut and the thyroid. So how are they connected?
yeah, so this has been a big part of me reversing my Hashimoto's. Remember, I mentioned earlier that part of being exposed to the mold and the toxins and the burden that that put on my body, it actually, negatively impacted my thyroid. It became dysfunctional. I developed Hashimoto's, and I was on a mission to reverse that. And so I really got into the thyroid space a little bit. And I've also worked with a lot of clients with thyroid issues that I'll talk about as well too, how this is related. But in looking at that, I mean, anytime there's something going on in the body, I think we need to take a step back and go, well, why is that happening? Right? Like, your body just doesn't wake up one day and decide to be dysfunctional. And you're also not destined to be dysfunctional. You
Right.
have to just accept that and live with it. And so when we look at some of the functionality of the thyroid as it relates to the liver and the gut, one of the big pieces of the puzzle here is that in the production of thyroid hormone, the thyroid will mainly produce some T4, so thyroid hormone T4. And then what the cells actually utilize in the body for your metabolism and all these things is thyroid hormone T3, what we call T3. And so T4 is converted into T3. And a big part of where that conversion happens is in the liver tissue and in the gut tissue.
Hmm.
So when we've got a dirty, congested, fatty liver going on, or we've got an inflamed, dysfunctional, messy intestinal tract going on, the tissues in there are not very healthy to support that conversion, right? Then we also look at things like, well, if with the digestive system, with the gut, that's where we absorb nutrients, and we need specific nutrients for thyroid hormone production and conversion. So a lot of people have heard about selenium and how important selenium is for thyroid. Well, we can eat all the healthy foods and take all the supplements, but if you're not actually absorbing those nutrients, they're not getting delivered in order to produce thyroid hormone or to convert it. So working on optimizing digestion, healing the gut can help in that absorption of those nutrients. So you get more bang for your buck with all the healthy food and supplements that you're putting in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
And the liver, everybody knows about the liver as the detox organ, right? It also helps us to balance our blood sugar. Like, it helps to regulate glucose in the body and like insulin and all these important things. And blood sugar regulation and insulin regulation also has an impact on thyroid. So we want to make sure that the liver is able to do those functions well, which means that it needs to be in good health, along with the detoxification process. So if the liver is congested and it's not detoxing very well and moving things out like it should, these toxins get trapped in the body, which then can have a multitude of negative impacts going on. I mean, these toxins, inflammation, they can create internal stress in the body. They can disrupt our adrenal cortisol balance. And they can also, something like mold, for example, like I mentioned earlier, mold mimics estrogen in the body. There's also other toxins like parabens and phthalates. Like, there's actually a whole classifications of toxins called xenoestrogens
Mm.
that will mimic estrogen in the body. We need the liver to be able to move those things out, because if it doesn't, then that backup is going to then have a negative impact on the thyroid. So cleaning up these two areas was a huge part of the work that I did. And I was able to reverse my Hashimoto's within 6 months and have, been in remission ever since. Yay. And this is what I see very commonly in a lot of the people that I work with. Like, a lot of them, one, like, know that they have a thyroid issue going on. Maybe they're taking thyroid medication, and even though they're taking thyroid medication, they still don't feel great, and their thyroid is not necessarily improving. And that's so we do a lot of work on cleaning up the liver and the gut, and a lot of other lifestyle things that help to support the thyroid. And then we see the stuff start to turn around, essentially, right? When we clean out parasites and bacteria in the intestinal lining, and those tissues heal and they're better absorbing nutrients, you'll see the T3s and the T4 come up, and then the TSH regulates itself. And the same thing will happen when we're cleaning up the liver as well, too.
So, how do you go about cleaning up the liver and cleaning up the gut so that the thyroid can come back online again?
Exactly. So it's a multi like faceted approach, right? Because as like my bio kind of implied, like, all the systems of the body are interconnected. Like, we don't want to just work on one thing at a time. So I like to, one thing that I really focus on with people is figuring out what foods are right for their body so that they can function at their potential, basically. And when that helps to, one, start to reduce inflammation in the digestive system when they're eating right for their body, it also maximizes the nutrients that they're getting that are right for their body, so the body can start innately healing itself, essentially. And it lowers the burden on the digestive system so that it can heal as
Right.
well for doing this. So I'll use a couple different assessments to help them figure that out. Is we'll take a look at like a food sensitivity test and see what things they're reactive and it's creating inflammation. And then also looking at something called metabolic typing, like, how do they metabolize foods? To kind of summarize a simplified explanation is like putting them into a category of like, are you a protein type? Are you more of a carb type or a mixed type, to understand what is the ratio of macronutrients that their body needs to feel their best and get what they need in their food. So we kind of blend this information. And then what I love to do is they have this information to help guide them, get them started. But then I have them eat foods according to some of this information, and they do a food and body language log to journal and see how their body is responding, right? To
Beautiful.
your point earlier, is that our body really holds all the answers. We just have to start paying attention. And so then they really understand what the foods are right for their body. And then looking at their sleep, sleep is a really big part of this. So sleep is when we recover. It's when our body does all of our restorative work. And if we're not sleeping really well during the appropriate times, according to our internal rhythms and clock, then we're not like getting the maximal like recovery period that we could be getting as well too. And so many people in this modern day world are like, staying up late, or they're waking up in the middle of the night, which is inhibiting their body's ability to detox, right, and to heal at nighttime. So really working on getting them into a good sleep routine, which, goes through everything from environmentally, what is their bedroom like? Does it support a good sleep quality, as well as taking a look at like, are you getting to sleep by 10 p.m.? And I love that you mentioned like Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic stuff, because I think that they do this really well. Like, I always tell my clients, I'm like, Google Chinese medicine body clock, and you'll see these great diagrams. I forget what the technical name for it is, but it shows the different times of the day according to the internal rhythms of the body that certain functions are happening. And
Mm-hmm.
we can see at nighttime, right, that detox is a big part of what happens at nighttime. And
Yes.
So cleaning up the liver, and which also helps us support the gut, we need to be sleeping during some of those critical times at night.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so important. So many people, I don't think realize how important that sleep is and the timing of sleep. But what do you think about the people say, well, I'm a night owl. I do better, staying up until 2 in the morning and sleeping early. What do you think about that?
So glad you asked me that question. Because I'm like, if we actually look at the biology of what humans are, we are diurnal beings. So we are day dwellers. We are not nocturnal, like, cats maybe or something, which I think even modern day cats are diurnal. My cats sleep all night and play all day. But anyways, our body is the way that humans biology is designed is around the sun cycle. We are meant to be up when the sun is up and sleeping when the sun is down. And so those people that think that they're night owls, it's really interesting. Some of the lab testing can shed some light on this, is that oftentimes what's happening is they have some cortisol rhythm dysregulation that's happening in the evening time. And cortisol hormone is equivalent to, you can think of it like adrenaline. So it gives you this spike of energy. So that's where people will feel like, I'm wired but tired, or I get a second wind and I do my best work at nighttime, because you've got this cortisol pumping when it's not supposed to be. And also, then we go, okay, well, what is happening with cortisol? Like, why is that happening? And one of the common correlations that I'll see is that people have gut bugs. They've got parasites, bacteria, or yeast overgrowth, and those organisms are nocturnal. So when
Great.
when the sun goes down, they start getting active, having a little party inside of our gut, and that activity creates internal stress and inflammation that stimulates the release of cortisol, where you're getting that
Mm.
adrenaline rush that can be happening. Very common.
Oh, that's such a great answer to that question. I wonder because I hear that a lot, and people sometimes just don't want to admit that perhaps their sleep cycle is off.
Yeah.
But I remember reading somewhere, and I don't know who said it, but that the light bulb was like one of the worst things that's ever happened for human health, because people started sleep, like staying awake when they should have been going to sleep. People didn't do that so much before. When the sun went down, they went to sleep. And, that's the way we're kind of meant to be, right? What about for people that live like, I know you're sort of closer to the equator where your days are pretty consistent most of the year. But what about people when they live further north and, like they have very little sunshine this time of year? To say that they should follow the sun kind of doesn't really work for them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that so I always like to say, one, listen to your body, right? And it's interesting because I work with clients that are in like the farther north in the northern hemisphere that have shorter days during the winter time. And they'll just naturally notice that in those shorter days, they tend to get like tired earlier. And that's, it's like honor that part of you. Obviously, we still have obligations and responsibilities as humans. We can't be sleeping all day. And so I would say, like, what I like to kind of set as a frame for people is just think that the hours between like 10 and 4 are the most critical to be sleeping.
Mm.
So that's when, again, like, if we look at that Chinese body clock diagram, you can look at some of those functions and see how important that they are, where we actually need to be in a rest and night. It's technically called the parasympathetic mode.
Yeah.
Simply, we will frame it as like the rest and digest space. And so in order for the body to perform some of those really critical functions at nighttime, we need to be in a very low stress, kind of still, relaxed place. And that's what sleep does for us. And when we're in that place, the body can divert all of its resources, like blood flow, for example, internally to those organs in order for them to do their job. And so that is a really critical window that I, at a minimum, encourage people to try and adhere to when it comes to their sleep.
Mm. Great advice. Okay, so interesting talking with you, and I think we could talk for hours on all this, and I could keep going with questions. But I'm going to, I want to ask this one question that I ask all of my guests, and that's like, out of all the things, what's one thing someone could do today that's going to, start initiating healing in their body? What would you say is the one thing you would recommend?
Can I say two things? I I actually think the sleep topic that we're talking about, I think I'm really um, feel strongly about the fact that we need to start to value sleep more than diet and exercise in some cases, because you can't out diet or out exercise poor quality sleep or poor sleep patterns. And
Mm,
your sleep, as we've been talking about, will actually help to create a foundation to regulate everything else. So, the sleep is where we do all the restoration and repairs so that our body can handle the intense exercise that we want to be doing. Or it's also where we just talked about, it's doing the detoxing components and it's repairing cells so that we can function more optimally. And when we're getting really good sleep, it actually helps to prevent cravings. So if you are trying to eat a healthier diet that's more in alignment for you, and there's a little bit of a struggle from that because you're craving carbs or sugars or feeling like you need a snack all the time, then a lot of that comes from like not getting great rest.
yeah.
And so therefore the body is like searching for energy, like immediate resources of energy,
Mm,
optimize everything
mm.
basically.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything we haven't talked about today regarding, the gut, the liver, and the thyroid connection that you want to make sure the audience hears?
Yeah, I want to talk about one more thing as it relates to the thyroid, the gut, and the liver specifically, of like, how do you heal some of those places, or how do you just be proactive to keep those things healthy? And one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that we live in a very toxic world. And our body is burdened with more toxins on a daily basis than any other moment in time. I mean, statistically, over 150,000 toxins have been introduced into our environment since World War II. I mean, I think that number is astronomical at this point in time. They don't release that information that frequently, but there's also statistics or research that shows us that our body deals with like over 2 pounds of toxins per day. And what we have to acknowledge is that when we think about the liver, like a lot of people would say, well, we have detox organs to get rid of that stuff. But the reality of the situation is that those toxins have been introduced into our environment at such a rapid pace. Our body has not had the ability to evolve to meet that demand, basically,
Mhm.
because evolution, like biological evolution, happens through lifespans, and humans live really long lives. So generationally, it may happen someday later, but currently, right now, like for me, my body hasn't evolved to that. So we need to start paying more attention to that, because as we already talked about, these things can burden the liver. They can actually like damage the intestinal lining. Certain toxins in our environment, like chlorine and fluoride and bromelain, can actually prevent thyroid hormone from being uptaken into cells. It can block their receptors. And paying more attention to this stuff. So we can't live in a bubble. Obviously, we have to be realistic about this. So it's a process of, looking at how can I minimize toxins as much as possible? And then what can I do to support my body's natural detox process? Things like getting physical activity every single day help to move the lymphatic system. I'm a huge fan of yoga for this specifically, because a lot of the poses help to massage and nourish the lymphatic system or the liver and move things out for us. Things like castor oil packs or infrared saunas, drinking enough water, because toxins are attached to water molecules and then eliminated through the body that way. And then looking at how do we minimize toxins, that can be a journey in itself. I feel like I've been working on this for years, and I think it's just slowly at your own pace, kind of etching away at that. Like, we just got a new mattress. We had a Tempur-Pedic for over 10 years, super toxic, because we got that mattress before I worked in this world. And so when it came time to get a new mattress, I did the research to find something that was going to be non-toxic and more supportive for us. So it's like, as you run out of stuff, look to replace it with, less or non-toxic items. And I have a little gift for people with this, a little toxins checklist that they'll be able to access, I think, with the interview here, to help them kind of evaluate their environment so that you can start chipping away at that stuff. And one of the questions on there, Jane, is about lighting, because fluorescent lighting is actually kind of considered a toxin in a
Mm.
way. It affects our body in multiple levels.
That's an awesome gift, and we'll have that in the show notes so people can download that. And yeah, I think people aren't realizing even things like furniture and mattresses and clothing even have chemicals on them that can be a real problem. So yeah, it's a great eye opener for people. Jenn, thanks so much. Where is the best place for people to find you?
I love to interact with people over on Instagram, so they can find me on Instagram at Holistic Health Boss, and holistic is with a W, like whole foods or whole body.
Okay.
Feel free to come over and send some messages, ask me questions. I share a lot of great information about things that we talked about today, and then also at my website, holistichealthboss.com.
Perfect. Okay, we'll have those links in the show notes. This is fabulous. Thank you so much for being a guest on Wellness by Design today. Really great insights. And I love that you gave people like tangible things that they can do as well for themselves if they're suspecting health problems. But even if they're not, like just the detoxing alone is huge. So thanks so much for that, Jenn.
Thanks for having me, Jane, and creating this space for us.
And thanks everyone for being here, for watching, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube or one of the other channels. And share this with someone. If you know someone who's got a thyroid issue, or you think maybe suffering from some of these issues, share this with them because they may need to hear this and you may just be changing their life. So thanks again for being here. Bye.